day to you. My name is Tom Brooks, and you find me in the Somerset home of journalist Jeff Ward and his wife Angela, to whom I'm just so grateful for the making of this documentary. The subject is prehistory, that period long before written records of our past began to emerge, and in fact reaching back more than halfway to the last ice age, a period known as the Mesolithic or Middle Stone Age. More particularly, we're to consider British prehistory, as examples of man's earliest works are to be found in greater profusion here than anywhere else in the world. Samples of the high-level camps, long barrows, mounds, cairns and standing stones will appear on screen as we proceed, to acquaint you of their exceptionally durable nature, having lasted 6 millennia, while our later endeavours in historic time have crumbled into ruin. Beyond this even, I intend to leave you in no doubt that, contrary to all expert opinion over the last 200 years or so, these British antiquities are not indiscriminately, randomly distributed across our landscape by primitive souls concerned mainly with death and ritual burial, but were laid out to a predetermined plan of such complexity and sophistication, to say nothing of profound accuracy, that there was obvious knowledge of geometric and mathematic properties allied to skilled surveying never before attributed to early man, and indeed confounding the accepted origin of mathematics itself. What I aim to put before you has never previously been discovered, and from it I conclude that some gifted elite society existed in or visited these islands in Mesolithic time, and in the context of the barren, challenging environment of that time possessed an intelligence level probably higher than that of today. My objective here is not to attempt how or why such a vast undertaking was contemplated and accomplished, but to provide convincing evidence that something very special indeed was etched into the British landscape so many centuries ago, the product of exceptionally fine minds. Already you will have seen on screen examples of the huge industry that has endured down the millennia, and in many instances appears as good today as when first built. Hilltops sculpted to a revised profile to provide more hospitable living conditions for a mixed population, defensive ramparts not to protect from their fellow man, as only a nationwide peaceable community could have designed and constructed such a network, but to provide a safe enclosure from the elements and undesirable wildlife, while the resulting ditches became the reservoirs for life's most important commodity, water, the high-level stations usually being above spring level. This work has been my lifetime hobby, beginning as a child when I became convinced that the 3 hills above my Devon village did not have natural profiles, but had been levelled and shaped due to some human intervention. This led later in life to the publication of my first book, not unsurprisingly entitled The Hand of Man. When 14, I spent 3 days on Hawksdown Camp above Seaton in Devon, drawing all I could see throughout 360 degrees, marvelling at the ingenuity of those who created such all-seeing safe havens. What we are seeing at the moment is Maiden Castle in Dorset, Europe's largest earthen enclosure, amazingly sharp in every detail despite the passage of so many centuries, while here we have arrived at Old Sarum above today's Salisbury. Old Sarum is a classic example of an encampment gouged from the already flat surface of a high plateau, and by its very outline tells us that the ancients, apart from being highly industrious, knew more than a little about geometry. When 15 at Colleton Grammar School, we were being taught fundamental geometry with graphs, x and y coordinates, and the calculation of distance and direction between given points. The national grid was not yet in vogue, So I produced my own grid on the old 1-inch Ordnance Survey using 16 half furlongs to the mile, and quickly linked the East Devon camps of Sidbury, Blackberry and Musbury, a line I was to extend dramatically in later life, as you will shortly see. With the advent of the excellent Ordnance Survey metric national grid covering the entire country with an accuracy that Global Positioning Service has been unable to disturb, I began to study the relationship between our prehistoric sites and convinced myself that some guiding mathematical principle was involved in their arrangement, although I'm certainly not a mathematician. 25 years ago, I drew my own map of Wales and southern England, upon which I superimposed accurately all the major and many minor antiquities of the post-Ice Age period, plotted from the many hundreds of grid references I had collated. All the calculations used to produce what you're about to see stem from this early work that has remained unchanged down the years. That map is on screen now, and the mathematically based patterns you're about to see have all been overlaid upon it with not a suggestion of alteration. Please remember that the alignments, triangulation, distances and resulting patterns have never previously been exposed by any other source. They have lain dormant on our landscape down the centuries, despite many sectors being used for transportation even today. I'm constantly reminded by those within the educational establishment that early man was primitive and his construction work random. Not only do I disagree, but I disagree emphatically, as this is utterly disrespectful to the elders, and I shall now set out to correct this unfounded misconception by illustrating just how advanced, how precise, and even how harmoniously geometric were their endeavours. First, let us try to visualize what it might have been like in Britain some 5,000 to 6,000 years before the present, following the Ice Age that had left northern Britain and Scandinavia under 3,000 feet of pack ice. It would have taken many centuries for the ice to disperse, leaving large areas underwater, and the rivers that had formed being slow-moving with wide estuaries and a higher sea level. It's not difficult to visualize man seeking the highest ground for sanctuary from the intimidating and probably virulent wildlife with which they would have had to share the lower slopes, and from such high-level havens as we see here from these wonderful aerial photographs by Jason Hawkes, it would have been possible to communicate with their fellow man and create trackways between. Their long barrows, with secure, comfortable chambers, designed not as tombs, but short-term rest houses for the traveller, together with mound and stone waymarks, would allow them to construct a network of navigation and communication at high level